Hi Sagittarius, welcome to your end of September 2021 General Tarot Update. It's Rena here, your fellow Sun and Sagittarius individual. We are having a full moon on, what do you call it? What date is it? It's on the 20th. So that's occurring at 28 degrees of Pisces, and that's for Sag. It's the fourth house of home and family. So if you're trying to sell a home, maybe that'll be a good time for that. It can certainly be connecting the dots when it comes to childhood issues, the past, your mother, or I'm going to take this one first, just family of origin in general. And so anyway, in the past position, we have the Eight of Swords. So this is about, how do you talk to yourself? How do you perceive your life? Do you perceive yourself as, do you perceive limitations, kind of like really front and center in your life? And Sag is usually a very upbeat, positive sign. So when a person doesn't have that kind of, when a Sagittarian doesn't have that kind of feeling or outlook, a lot of times it could be things coming up, and maybe you used to and you don't have that anymore. And it could be because kind of that purging, and that's kind of what that energy is like too. That full moon energy is purging energy, that brings things up to the surface. And this is actually a good thing for healing, but it can feel very overwhelming for you at the time, because you might feel like, why am I thinking about this? This happened X amount of years ago. I've moved on. Fire energy is very like forward moving, but sometimes you can move a little bit too fast and you don't process something. So it remains, this is what the shadow is all about, where something is not processed and therefore integrated into who you are. Any kind of traumas that you've had that, you don't want to really deal with. It's so ironic because a lot of people say, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to talk about that. That's the past. And they don't really deal with it, and it still controls them. People think that if they ignore something that they're not going to let it control them, but it doesn't work that way, does it? So maybe these are themes of your life at this time. And, I don't want to just tie everything to astrological transits. It might be, you're turning a certain age that is considered a important marker of time, like 40, or even like 20. I know that sounds funny, but I remember when I turned 20, I was like, oh, I'm not a teenager. I thought I was like over the hill. I was 20 years old. So yeah, it's just pretty interesting, the different perspectives out there. And, I see the Eight of Swords a lot of times as the programming that we are raised with that can create those self-limiting beliefs. So because you are so acclimated to positivity, and yet, we have to watch out for that. Some people call it toxic positivity, which to me is too contradictory. I would rather call it the spiritual bypassing. and really feel your feelings, it can just get very repressed. And actually, I usually don't read this card or talk about this card like second. I usually talk about it third. But this is the higher message, which is the Nine of Swords. So I got the Eight of Swords and the Nine of Swords. And this is a card of anxiety, staying up too late because you're worried about something, or you might not even know you're worried. You're just high-strung, whatever you want to call it. And again, you know, when people are not processing things, but also the premise that people have about life. Sometimes there's a faulty premise that keeps a person way too, you know, obsessed with the worldly achievements or what have you, and then, you know, not being able to see themselves in a positive light if they haven't achieved those things. So it can be these unrealistic expectations, or the expectations of someone other than who it's supposed to, you know, the expectations of somebody else that you're allowing to control you, perhaps. I don't know. So the central theme, and I usually don't talk about this third, but I just wanted to focus on those two cards that are associated with maybe inner conflict. The Knight of Cups in the center of all of this can be this person who is kind of, if you look at it in a certain way, your savior, a saving grace. We'll just say a saving grace. They could literally be a water sign. So for some reason, Pisces jumped out at me, but Cancer or Scorpio. And this person, if you are somebody who's artistic, you may share that side of life with them, and they might give you a certain kind of attention or respect that elevates you from a low vibration, perhaps. And yet no one can save somebody from themselves ultimately. So this person, if you are in a maybe those sword cards have to do with the person that you're with who is problematic. Swords, air signs. And the air element is very detached. The cups represents water. The swords represents air. The air signs are Gemini, which is your opposite sign, Libra, and Aquarius. And these signs, you are kind of acclimated to them. So it's not that you wouldn't have anything in common with them, but you may be somebody that really needs a partner who is more emotionally connected or plugged in, you could say. And maybe this is the kind of problem that you have with this person, is that they're not very attuned to your sensitivities, and they seem almost aloof, unavailable, emotionally unavailable, and that creates a lot of I don't know if I call it turmoil, but for some Sagittarians, if this is accurate, it's like I would call it more of a trigger, because it reminds you maybe of not getting that kind of emotional nurturing when you're growing up, and feeling that same, I don't know if you call it abandonment or emotional abandonment. Maybe you had the parent right there, but they were not emotionally tuned into you, and they're kind of checked out. So in some cases, the Knight of Cups can be this fantasy you have of being rescued by this person. And if that's the case, you definitely have to temper that with reality. This can happen especially if the person has the moon in Pisces, for instance, the Sagittarian, where they have a tendency to kind of fantasize about, being rescued or just treated in a certain way, because that's apart from what is really happening in their life, and they feel this sense of, wouldn't it be great if I could have this? And the knight in shining armor, that's a fairy tale. You have to give that to yourself. You have to give yourself self-love. What crosses you is the Hierophant. This is a card connected to the clergy, connected to conformity. Maybe you have gotten involved in a relationship with somebody to be like that respectable person, to be that person in society that gets married. Because the Hierophant can actually be about marriage, but all kinds of belief systems that are very traditional and conformist, and that's not Sag. Sag is a rebel. And, there's that phrase, rebel without a cause, because it's assumed that if you're being rebellious, you're obviously being a little brat. You're obviously doing something that is wrong. You're not going along with the program. And, not going to elaborate too much on that, but going along with the program to me is not, what we're here for. And those two swords cards, if the Knight of Cups is connected to any kind of creative endeavor, maybe with another person, those two cards can be that sense of alienation from your creative side, and also in your interactions with other people. Some people who are creative, they do so in tandem with others. So for instance, musicians is a given, they're jamming, they're involved. Or if you're talking about somebody who's part of a theater group, there's a real communal sense with certain types of artistic self-expression. And maybe this is something that you're longing for, and that's where all of that stress is coming from, because you're not doing what you should be doing. And maybe you've gone kind of in a different direction. What is coming in is the Emperor, and this is a card, it's number 4, Major Arcana. It's associated with order. So I would say taking control of your life. If you feel like your life has been out of your control, and certainly with the 8 and 9 of Swords, that might have been something that has been bothering you. And taking back your life, whatever that means to you, Sag. And the outcome is the Page of Pentacles, and this is a card of a new, maybe this is a new business, a new type of, something to do. You might hear a message, Page's message about work. If this is something that has, with the 8 of Swords, it might have even been slightly torturous, because you have been waiting and waiting, and you hear word. This can be the student. So somebody who's going, maybe it's not traditional school, maybe it's some other kind of training. Sometimes this can be a small sum of money that you receive, and you receive a message about it. Yes, the Mercury Retrograde is going to happen during this time frame. I believe it's on the 27th of September. So but that doesn't mean that that's going to necessarily affect your ability to receive money. Oh yeah, now that I think about it, that that Mercury retrograde is happening in Libra. And for Sag, that is in the 11th house of gains. And so I would even, I wouldn't be surprised if some Sagittarians find that something that they put into motion a long time ago that they might have even forgotten about, that comes back. And it could be in a positive way, because Pentacles can relate to the material energy. Okay, that's what I have for you, Sag. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a personal reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.